My husband didn't know I was a boss and told me to leave, calling me foolish. The next day shocked him. Welcome back with a new real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. At the end, don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone.
I still remember that night like it was yesterday. I was sitting in our small living room, the kind with worn-out cushions and a faint scent of coffee that never quite went away. Everything seemed normal, too normal. He, my husband, was pacing quietly in the kitchen. I could hear the clink of a spoon against a mug. No loud arguments, no shouting, just silence, heavy with something I couldn't name. My heart was calm, yet somehow uneasy. Then I heard it. His voice. Low. Cold. "You should just leave, Alec. You're being foolish." That hit me harder than I expected. Foolish. The word lingered in the air, bouncing off the walls, sinking into my chest. I stared at him. I wanted to speak, but no words came. I just watched as he turned his back to me. My hands curled into fists, but I didn't move. I didn't want to cry. Not yet. I knew this wasn't the end. Something deep inside me told me there was more coming. Something big. Something I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't just about us. It wasn't just about that moment. My life had always been one of quiet battles. Small, unseen wars that only I knew about. He didn't know. No one knew. The truth I carried wasn't something I'd shouted from rooftops. And yet, somehow, my entire world was about to change in ways I never imagined. The next day, I woke up with a strange feeling, something between dread and determination. The morning light came soft through our curtains, but the air in the room felt heavier. I kept replaying his words in my head. Foolish. It wasn't just an insult. It was a challenge. I wasn't going to let him or anyone else decide what I was worth. That day, everything shifted. I found myself walking towards something unknown, carrying a secret I had never revealed. A secret that would change everything. The kind of secret that, once known, could never be taken back. By noon, I knew I had to act, but I didn't know exactly how. And that uncertainty, it was terrifying. As I walked down the street that afternoon, every step felt heavier, not because of the distance, but because I was walking toward a truth that could break my life apart. The city around me buzzed with noise. People laughed, talked, hurried. They didn't see what was happening inside me. They didn't know my world was about to collapse and rebuild at the same time. And I wondered, how could they? Even I didn't fully understand it yet. As I turned the corner, my phone buzzed. It was a message from him. Just 2 words. "We need to talk." My stomach twisted. That phrase could mean so many things. But I knew one thing for sure. What happened next would change us forever. And I wasn't ready. Or maybe, deep down, I was exactly ready for it. But what happened after that conversation? It was nothing I could have expected. It wasn't just a change for us. It was a turning point that would make me question everything I thought I knew about myself, about love, about respect, and about truth. The question now was, would I walk away? Or would I stand and fight in a way he never saw coming? The words from his message stayed in my mind the whole day. "We need to talk." They replayed like a broken record, twisting my thoughts into knots. I couldn't work. I couldn't eat. Even walking felt heavy, as though my feet were carrying more than my body could bear. Every shadow seemed louder, every sound sharper. The city felt different, like it knew something I didn't yet. By evening, I decided I couldn't avoid it any longer. I went to the little cafe where we had first met years ago, not for a coffee, not for comfort, but to force myself into clarity. I sat there, staring at my hands wrapped around a mug of tea I hadn't touched. The warmth seeped into my skin, but it didn't reach my heart. I remembered that moment years ago when I first told him about my dreams, my plans to lead, to create, to build something that was mine. He had smiled then, proud and encouraging. But pride fades, encouragement fades, and somewhere along the way, respect faded too. He never knew that while I carried those dreams, I was already working in silence, building my own path. I never told him. I guess I wanted to surprise him someday. But life doesn't wait for the perfect moment. And apparently, neither does truth. When I walked back home that night, I felt a strange mix of fear and power. It was as though my body knew something important was about to happen. My phone buzzed again. It was him. This time. Come home. I hesitated. For a second, I thought about ignoring it, about walking away and never looking back. But something inside me wouldn't let me. I walked inside and found him sitting in the living room, his face unreadable. No anger, no warmth, just a kind of heavy silence that made my chest tighten. He didn't look at me when I entered. I sat across from him. My hands were still trembling, but I kept them steady. He finally spoke. His voice low and quiet, almost broken. I didn't know. I didn't know you were like this. Like what? I asked softly, though my heart was pounding. You're a boss, he said finally, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. There was hurt in his eyes now, not toward me, but toward himself. I thought you were just playing along, but you weren't. You built all this, and I told you to leave. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even recognition, but it was enough to open a door I didn't know was closed. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, my mind racing. I could see the weight of regret settling over him, but it wasn't about him anymore. This was about me, and I realized in that moment that my life wasn't defined by what he thought of me. It was defined by what I knew I was worth. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The silence between us was louder than any argument we'd had. Somewhere deep down, I knew my life was about to change forever. But I didn't know how. I only knew that I couldn't go back to what we had. Not after this. The next morning, I woke with a strange determination, the kind that feels like both a curse and a blessing. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Meet me. I didn't know where. I didn't know why. But I knew I couldn't refuse. Not now. Not when everything was about to unravel. That day felt heavy, like the air was pressing down on me. Every step I took toward our meeting place felt like stepping closer to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to face. But I had to face it anyway. When I arrived, he was already there, standing quietly, not looking at me. I could feel the tension between us, thick and electric. We didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. You have no idea what this will mean for us. And I thought, maybe I do, or maybe I'm about to find out. What I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning. The next hours would test every belief I had, every dream I held, and every ounce of courage I could summon. What happened next would change not just our lives, but everything I thought I knew about strength, truth, and love. I didn't know it yet, but my world was about to shift forever. When I saw him standing there, under the pale light of that street lamp, I could feel something shift deep inside me. The air was still, almost heavy, as though the world was holding its breath. He didn't look at me at first, just stood there, his shoulders stiff, his hands clenched at his sides. I could see it, the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on him, on both of us. I stepped closer. My shoes clicked softly against the pavement, but in that silence, it sounded like thunder. He finally looked at me, his eyes dark, conflicted, almost haunted. I could see he wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. And then he said it. Quiet, almost like a confession. I didn't believe you could do it. I thought you were dreaming. I never thought you were serious. His words cut through me in ways I wasn't prepared for. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. I had kept my dreams hidden. Not for him, but for fear of being dismissed. And now, standing there, I realized that silence had cost me everything. I took a deep breath. My voice came steady, even though my heart was pounding. I'm not dreaming anymore. This is real, and I'm not walking away from it. He flinched, like my words were blows he hadn't expected. Then, unexpectedly, his voice cracked. You don't understand what this means for us. For me. For everything. That was it. The moment when the air seemed to crackle with everything unspoken between us. I knew what he meant. This wasn't just about me proving something. This was about him letting go of who he thought I was, and me stepping into who I really was. Without another word, I turned and began to walk away. But my feet felt heavier than before. The ground beneath me seemed uncertain, as though it too was questioning my choice. Behind me, I could hear him call my name, but I didn't stop. Not yet. The next hours were a blur. My mind replayed every moment of that night. Every look, every word, every silence. I knew we were both holding on to something fragile. But I also knew that what I was holding on to was stronger than fear. Stronger than regret. Stronger than him telling me I was foolish. That night, I didn't go home. I wandered the streets alone, feeling the city breathe around me. There was something terrifying about the quiet, as though the world knew a storm was coming. And I knew it was mine. Somewhere deep inside, I felt a truth waking up. One I hadn't allowed myself to face before. That the moment I stopped hiding, I became unstoppable. That the moment I refused to let someone else decide my worth, I truly became free. And yet, freedom didn't feel easy. It felt raw, dangerous, necessary. Later, when I finally returned home, it was empty, not silent, but empty in the way that follows after a war. The air carried an ache, a mix of loss and change. I knew he was somewhere out there, wrestling with the same truth I was, and I knew our story was far from over. That night, I lay awake, thinking about everything that had happened. My mind was filled with one question I couldn't shake. How many moments in life pass without us realizing we're standing at the edge of change? And how many of us walk away without stepping forward? I didn't know the answer, but I knew I wasn't walking away anymore. The next morning came heavy, but different. There was a quiet strength in me I hadn't felt before. Something in me had shifted forever. I could feel it in every step I took, in every breath I drew. I wasn't the same Alec Rose who had walked into that living room and been told she was foolish. I was someone new, someone dangerous to the status quo. And deep down, I knew the moment was coming when I would have to prove it. The days that followed were heavy, but they were filled with clarity. I woke up each morning carrying the weight of what had happened, but also a strange sense of liberation. That night had changed everything. I could still hear his voice echoing in my mind, not in anger, but in disbelief. And I realized something. I didn't just need to prove something to him. I needed to prove it to myself. I began to move differently. My steps were quieter, but firmer. My voice was softer, but steadier. There was a new rhythm to my days, a new fire in my heart. I started to speak openly about my dreams, even to strangers. It was terrifying at first, because opening yourself to the world also opens you to judgment. But something inside me insisted, if I kept hiding, I would never truly live. I remember one afternoon, walking through the park, watching families out and friends laugh together. I felt a pang of longing, but not sadness. It was hope, the kind that burns quietly, but persistently. I thought about everything I had endured, all the times I had been told I was foolish, weak, or too ambitious. And I thought about how far I'd come. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I mattered, that my voice mattered, that my life mattered. I started writing again, pouring every emotion into words, telling my story without hesitation. And as I wrote, I began to realize my story wasn't just mine. It was part of a larger truth, a truth that countless others lived every day. That so many people, especially women who dared to dream, were silenced by disbelief and fear. I thought about him, about what he said, and I understood then that his doubt wasn't just about me. It was about the fear of change, the fear of facing the truth that sometimes the ones we love most don't fully see us until we stand apart. One evening, I sat by the window, looking out at the fading light. I felt a quiet resolve in my heart. I wasn't asking for his understanding anymore. I wasn't asking for permission. I was asking for my own courage. And I promised myself something that night. I would never again let anyone define my worth. I would never again let fear stop me from stepping into my power. Because the truth is this: life doesn't give us signs when change is coming. There's no warning before you stand at the edge of something new. But once you see the edge, you have a choice. You can step back into safety, or you can step forward into the unknown. I stepped forward. And the moment I did, I felt something break loose inside me. Not fear, not doubt, but freedom. My story didn't end that night. It became something bigger, something that belonged to everyone who had been told they were too much, too bold, too foolish to matter. My story became theirs. And now I ask you, the person listening to me right now, what edge are you standing at? What truth are you afraid to face? Because the moment you decide to step forward, everything changes. And maybe, just maybe, that's the moment your real story begins. I never imagined it would end like this. Not in the way people expect endings to be. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no grand applause, just a quiet truth settling over me like a deep breath after a storm. I sit here now, telling you this story, and I still feel the weight of that night, the night my life shifted forever. Not because someone told me I was foolish, but because I decided I wasn't going to believe it anymore. That moment wasn't just about proving something to him, or even to myself. It was about waking up to who I truly was. In the days that followed, I rebuilt pieces of myself I didn't even know were broken. I learned that courage isn't a loud thing. It's quiet. It's persistent. It's the small, steady steps you take when the world is shouting at you to turn back. And I found that once you start walking forward, everything changes. I became who I was meant to be, not in spite of fear, but because of it. Fear became my compass, not my prison. And in that transformation, I discovered something deeper: the power of owning your story. This story isn't just mine. It belongs to anyone who has ever been silenced, underestimated, or told they're not enough. It belongs to everyone who's been told to leave, to step back, to give up. My story is a reminder that sometimes the greatest battles happen in quiet moments, and the greatest victories are the ones you win for yourself. So here's what I want you to take away. Life doesn't wait for permission. Your dreams don't ask for approval. Your worth doesn't need validation. All it needs is for you to believe in yourself enough to take that first step. And maybe that's the real question you should ask yourself right now. Will you step forward? Or will you let fear keep you standing still? Because once you step forward, everything changes. I did, and I haven't looked back since.